Welcome back, baseball fans, to your 1971-74 Carryover League Draft. First round draft results are in. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, the first round of the draft is done in almost record time. It took me, let's see, it's 9:39 on the clock. I started at 6:15, so I did a round in 3 hours and 10 minutes. I beat the NFL faster than the National Football League, so good for me. Barely. So let's do your picks here. A little discussion after the pick. Sometimes you'll see two picks. If a team has a right to a player in the same year, you can announce it at the same time. It saves time in the draft. Just a quick recap of the draft order. Philadelphia had the worst record in the league a year ago. They got the first pick in the draft. And your Big Red Machine beat Oakland in the World Series. The Reds are 32, Oakland's 31. And that's basically the crux of the matter here. And let's just get into this. I don't want to delay this anymore. The picks will start scrolling up on the screen. And we begin with Philadelphia. And a little statement before we talk. Youth is being served. Normally, when you have 8 vacant roster spots and 4 keepers, the best players from a year ago whose cards expired, are mostly the first round picks. And they can be in different order, of course, but youth, rookies, and particularly the years of 73 and 74 are dented heavily in this draft. So let's, without further ado, the Phillies, with the first pick in the draft, they would select Michael Jack Schmidt, his 1974 card. No, he's not a rookie. Played in 73. But they waited to get the 74 card of Mike Schmidt. He's got a 941 OPS, a 2E26 at third base. Funny part about this card is he'll have this template in 80 and 81 when he's the MVP. Of course, there's different information, more power and so forth, but 36 home runs, a 282 batting average, a 395 on base, 546, blah, blah, blah. It's Mike Schmidt. He's 24 years old doing this, and he'll be just ripping years off like this for the next, I don't know, dozen years or so. One of the greatest performers in the timeline. And his career will be tied to the next player we see, because with the second pick in the draft, the team on the clock is your Kansas City Royals. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, they would take, from the same year of 74, George Brett. Now, his numbers aren't quite as good as Schmidt. Actually, the batting averages are identical. The defenses are identical. They're both 2E26, third baseman at 282. Power's a different story, of course. And we know Brett will be winning a batting title by 1976, I believe. Mike Schmidt, George Brett. By the way, Brett's 21 years old, too, so give him a break on as far as the power and all that sort of stuff for 3 more years. Schmidt and Brett tied together here. They'll meet in 1980 at the height of their powers. Wonderful to draft first and second these two guys, and yes, they're rookies. By the way, when you see the shading here, not be green, blue, or one of these other colors, it means they're a rookie. So we know these are, of course, rookies. Or let's just qualify that remark and say they have not been in the league yet. Schmidt lost his rookie status with his 73 card. All right. Next up on the clock, and another nice pick. It's not going to be a conventional pick, but the San Diego Padres are on the clock, and they decided to take a 1973 Johnny Grubb, who is ready at age 24. He's a nice multi-tool player. They could have taken Winfield, but Winfield's not quite ready. Grubb certainly is. He's 2E5 in center field, a 311 hitter. He's got speed. He's got an 818 OPS. He's not Brett or Schmidt, but let's face it, the Padres aren't winning the division anytime soon anyway. So Johnny Grubb is the best rookie hitter, a 311 hitter, like I said, 373 on base, with stolen bases, Nice pick. 2 in center field. Love that. Johnny Grubb is the first pick for the Padres. So far, the teams are leaving open the second pick in that particular year. They haven't doubled up yet. All right, so with the 4th pick in the draft, it is the New York Yankees, and yes, youth will be served again for the 4th pick in a row. We're going young. Dr. Medich. Doc Medich is 1973 year, 14-9, 295 ERA in 235 innings with a 340 ERA. They're going to put him in the rotation with Fritz Peterson, Mel Stottlemyre, Jim McAndrew, and they're going to kick Mike Kekich into the bullpen, which is a nice thing to do. Instead of starting him, which is a kind thing, that's the only pick, again, they would make. They didn't exercise their other 73 option. The Expos. Oh boy, more rookies. And what do you see this, folks? Wait till you see this. Is it going to be Rusty Staub? No. Is it going to be Ken Singleton? No. Who's it going to be then? It's going to be from 74. They're doubling up. First team to do it. Oh my goodness. Mike Jorgensen's best year with the Expos in 1974. He's a 1E2 at first. If you're crazy enough to play him in the outfield, he's a decent 3E3 with a 0 arm. He only hit .310 with a 444 on base and a 931 OPS. They weren't done. They weren't done. They had the rights to a player in their rookie class that nobody else had, and that is Dale Murray. Dale Murray, here we go, folks. 69 2/3 innings, a 1.03 ERA for Dale Murray. So, just a hideously awesome closer and first baseman. Jorgensen's numbers are freaking scary. Plus the defense. And he's, as a lefty, he hits lefties better than righties. It's not a full season. It's 366 plate appearances. We get that, it's hard. I doubt he could do that for 600 or 700 plate appearances based on the rest of his career. But hey, this is what the Expos need. 2 lightning bolt players to suddenly put this team on the map. And they got them, folks. Youth. So we have 6 players. They're all rookies. Amazing. Next on the clock, it is the Cubs. And finally, there's some sanity. Finally, a team said, what about the guys who are already put this baseball game on the map? Are you going to give them guys any love here in the first round? And the answer is yes. Because the Cubs, of course, had the rights to Billy Williams with a 70 card. They got retired. So they come back as a keeper. Billy Williams, finally a veteran player. 34-year-old Billy Williams was taken here. He is a 333, 1,005. Yes, 1,005 OPS in 72. Is it better than 70? I'm not going to debate it. They're both brilliant years for a brilliant player. Billy Williams is a Cub. Did they double up with another selection? I do not think so. They did not. All right, next team on the clock is Seattle, an expansion team that did not exist in this timeline. And they decided to double up with picks, and they decided that they needed to ascend in the division by hurting the Oakland A's, who would run away with this division for 3 years if these expansion teams or recently moved teams like the Texas Rangers, who moved from Washington, didn't step up and interrupt the dynasty. So Seattle, in the expansion draft, took Bill North, 73 Bill North. Great range and arm and speed. The spark plug of the top of that 73 Oakland team, probably the best of the 3 dynasty year Oakland A's, 73. And Bill North is on Seattle. And so Oakland will have to look elsewhere for a center fielder in this draft. They doubled up in the year of 73. They had the rights to Diego Segui, and he was a relief starter. He's now a full-time reliever. They picked him up with a 2.78 ERA in 100 innings as their 6th round pick. So they announced Bill North and Diego Segui to the Seattle Mariners. All right, next up, you have Portland. And they would announce 2 players. The first of which, the first improved player. This is the first time a team looked at the guys on the team presently and say, can we make him better in another year? That's why you see this light green shaded color and also this code here. I'll explain this code means. This is the 73 version of Bob Montgomery, and we had his 72 card in the league, the 5th player in the 72 batch for Portland, and so they are going to be 1 player short at the end of the draft. And that's where the token round and the undrafted free agent part of the draft is so important. Bob Montgomery, why did we bump Bob Montgomery up? Because of a 320, 353, 563, 915 catching line. Oh my goodness, folks. Short sample guys, 137 plate appearances for Portland. This is how Portland can compete with the traditional powerhouses. The problem is there's not that many Bob Montgomerys available to Portland to fill out the roster, but at least they have him, and they can boast a 320 hitter. They also, in the offseason, it's funny, the Cincinnati Reds let Bernie Carbo go. He got him a 1970. I think he drove in the winning run in Game 7. I believe he did in that World Series I played last summer. And they let him go. They didn't have any room for Bernie Carbo because of Johnny Bench and Pete Rose and Tony Perez and Bobby Tolan. So Carbo had to go, and Portland said, come here, Bernie. We need you. And in this timeline, 73 is clearly the best year for him. 286, 819 OPS, and a great throwing arm, corner outfielder, Bernie Carbo. Nice picks for an expansion team that's not expected to do much. All right, a surprisingly disappointing team from a year ago, the Baltimore Orioles. Believe it or not, they won the World Series 3 years ago. And last year they missed the playoffs altogether. They slumped horribly. And guys like Mike Cuellar and Boog Powell had off years. So they're up in the draft this year. And they took a couple guys. Of course, they dip into their Hall of Fame, Ring of Honor roster internally. And they took in the year of 73, they got Jim Palmer's year. He's a 20-game winner in 71, 2, and 3. Looking at the cards closely, we like the 73 Palmer. Only 16 home runs allowed, which I think is pretty cool. And not a lot of walks versus left-handed pitching, and he's only 27 years old. My goodness. Jeez, he's right in the middle of it, folks. 27-year-old Jim Palmer trying to get this team back to a World Series. And in the year of 73, they double up. Dick Hall was getting up there in age, needed a right-handed reliever. Hello, Bob Reynolds, who interestingly is 26 years old. That is bizarre. Only a single year younger than Jim Palmer. 7 years ago, Jim Palmer pitched in the 1966 World Series against the Dodgers. Bob Reynolds is a year younger than him. Bob Reynolds got a 1.95 ERA. He had a couple nice years in Baltimore. This is his best one. He'll turn into a pumpkin by 74, 75. Okay. Next up, picking 10th, the Florida Marlins. We often see expansion teams doing internal improvements, aka Portland and Bob Montgomery, and Florida does the same kind of thing. It's the year 74. They have the rights and own Hal McRae. Hal McRae was one of those Kansas City players that they just can't protect everybody in Kansas City, so they let the designated hitter go. By the way, Cincinnati couldn't protect him either because of all the talent on the Reds. Kansas City couldn't either. He ends up on Florida, and he has eligibility to play third base. Look at that, a 4.28 at third base in 74. A 28-year-old Hal McRae in 607 plate appearances. 310, 850 OPS. He is your Florida Marlin improved player. That's all he did. Next on the clock, the California Angels. Now, it's always a great coup to get a stud left-handed starting pitcher, right? California decided to go to the 4-year contract with your 74 player, 4 years out, and they doubled up on left-handed starting pitchers with 4-year contracts. This is ridiculous. So they take Frank Tanana and Andy Hassler. 2 lefties. Tanana can pitch on 3 days rest. Hassler cannot. But Hassler's got a 2.61 ERA and 162 innings. Tanana 3.12. 2 guys, a 20-year-old Tanana, a 22-year-old Hassler. Gotta watch Hassler. He's kind of up and down in the decade. But this is clearly his best year. Tanana will be steady for about 4 more years till he gets some arm injuries. But 2 lefty starters to join Dave LaRoche in the bullpen. And don't forget they got Nolan Ryan and Bill Singer. And Mr. Nobody on offense. They have no offense in California. They have to do with pitching. Tanana and Hassler. Amazing. You can get 2 lefty starters in 1 round. That's incredible. All right, next up on the clock, the Ohio expansion team, the Ohio Players. Named, of course, after the funk band. Playing in Dayton. They took 2 players as well. Nice picks here. They have the rights to Dave Cash. They took his 74 card at age 26. He hits 300 as a 2 second baseman. They also took George Hendrick. George Hendrick is a 2 defensive center fielder. And turn this down a little bit. There we go. So 2 defensive center fielders, Hendrick. And a 279, 767 OPS. But it's a good futures pick. You know, I mentioned many times, these expansion teams often are good places to put players who bounce from team to team to team. And George Hendrick was with Oakland, was with Cleveland, was with San Diego, was with St. Louis, was with probably some more teams. So he will just sign up with Ohio players and just stay there forever because they're an expansion team. They need all the help they can get. And George Hendrick has a nice long career. He's going to produce for the next 12 years or so. So great pick, Dave Cash, George Hendrick, going to the Ohio Players. All right, next the Giants. Boy, loaded system, loaded farm system. They've got some old guys getting up there in years. They got some young guys. They got to do this right. They got to be very careful how they pick and choose years with the Giants, or they're going to blow the whole thing. But they were going to go Willie McCovey, 71, but they thought he's old. But then, believe it or not, they said, what happens to Willie McCovey in 73? He's 35 years old. He's actually better. He's better in 73 than he is in the 71 because he's got a 966 OPS. That's 29 home runs. So they double up, not just Willie McCovey, they double up by improving Ed Goodson, who was just a pinch hitter DH last year. They need a third baseman. So Ed Goodson is a 300 hitting, left-handed hitting third baseman. So they got those 2 guys in 73. They still have the rights to Dick Dietz and Sam McDowell and Don McMahon, but they'll take them in the years of 71 and 72, we believe. All right. That's why they pushed McCovey to that great 73 card. And also, you don't have to worry about Willie McCovey for the next 3 years. So, as a Giant. Probably not going to let McCovey go to the Padres. He goes to the Padres at one point, and I don't think I'm going to push that in the narrative. I'll leave him as a lifetime Giant. Probably. Okay. Next up, the Tigers. Now, what's interesting, the Tigers, known as an older team with veteran players who they just keep on playing. Something about the water in Detroit. Those Tigers can play into their mid to late 30s and produce. This is the first team, now that we are, where are we? 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14th pick in the draft. The first team to select a player from 1971. It's your Detroit Tigers, and they doubled up. They took Al Kaline with a great 294, 416 on base percentage. My goodness. 2-0 in the outfield. He's 36 years old. He'll join 37-year-old Norm Cash and 35-year-old Bill Freehan. This Tiger team just goes on and on and on and on, and eventually just collapses when they all get old at the same time. But anyway, they also took 26-year-old Fred Sherman, a nice lefty setup guy with a 271 ERA, to join John Hiller in that bullpen. So, Kaline and Sherman, the first 71 players selected in this draft. Colorado Rockies, another team. Expansion teams like to improve players, and they do the same thing. In the year of 74, they had Rick Auerbach, who was a 210 hitter from Milwaukee with a 72 card. No more. They found out that in 1974, he hits 342 with a 791 OPS. Utility player. Only 82 plate appearances. But again, Colorado, like Florida, like Portland, they got to figure, and the Ohio players, they got to figure out ways to compete with the traditional major league powerhouses, and this is the way to do it. They also, in 74, had the rights to Don Money, so they picked him up. By the way, Don Money's no fluke. Don Money has 709 plate appearances, so you can't say, oh, all your expansion teams are just taking those pinch hitter guys. No, Don Money's an everyday dude, and he's a 1E8 third baseman. So, Money and Auerbach, two infielders, going to Colorado. All right, halfway through is Arizona, the 16th pick in the draft. They went out and wanted to make a splash. They traded for Merv Retman. This will be his final monster year. He's very good with Baltimore in 70 and 71. And this is 71, and he is a 318 hitter, 422 on base, 870. And this will be his last dominant year. 589 plate appearances. He'll still be a decent player after this, but not an all-star. He'll be like a 260 hitter with a bunch of walks through most of this decade. But Merv Retman is going to Arizona. All right. Now we go to the 17th pick in the draft. Oh, Texas. Texas boasts a heck of a farm system, folks. I mean, they had a nice little lull there, going from the Washington Senators to the Rangers for a year or two. But then suddenly, it all bloomed at once. They brought Toby Harrah and Jeff Burroughs into the league a year ago. This year, they double up from 74 players. They go Mike Hargrove and Lenny Randle. Wow. So 24-year-old Hargrove, a 2 first baseman, the human rain delay for the amount of time he spends getting in and out of the box, adjusting his everything. 477 plate appearances, a 323 batting average, and an 819 OPS. But Lenny Randle, guy can play second and third, but he's a 300 hitter in 573 plate appearances. Lenny Randle, switch hitter, hits 302. How can you not love that? He's only got a 693 OPS, but 302 is 302, folks. Great year for Lenny Randle and Mike Hargrove. How about the Rangers? Getting young. Plus, they still got the old guards still kicking around. The Mike Epsteins and Frank Howard to be taken later in the draft. So they're the young and the restless. They got young guys and old guys trying to get on the mesh. And yeah, they're in the daunting task division where Oakland is sitting at the top. But at least they have some spunk now and can kind of be a sniper and knock them down a bit. All right, Pirates, just like Detroit. Their guys just get old and get great. You thought 36-year-old Al Kaline was good with a 294 average? How about 36-year-old Roberto Clemente hitting 341 and winning the 1971 World Series for the Pittsburgh Pirates? Oh yeah, he's a 1E2 with a -5 arm in right field. I don't know how Clemente and Willie Mays did it. How are these guys like 1s and 2s with -something arms at that age? You just don't see that in the present game anymore. I mean, your outfielders lose their legs by the time they're 33, 34, it seems. Not these dudes. Anyway, they double up with Clemente and Bob Robertson, who has his best year in Pittsburgh. He's only 24, by the way. 26 home runs and an 840 OPS. And they still have Stargell in left field, and Al Oliver will be moved into center field where Matty Alou was playing. So they're moving the pieces around to get everybody in the game at once. They have Richie Zisk, they brought in as a rookie last year to be a DH in an era where there wasn't a DH, but it just makes the rich richer. And the Pirates, they got to do it this year. This is their last chance with that 71 World Series roster that hasn't done anything yet. They're in the same division with the Cincinnati Reds, and we expect a dogfight this year between the Reds and Pirates. My goodness. All right, St. Louis, and they're like, hey, don't forget about us in that division. I know you like the Reds and Pirates, but look, we went out with Boston and we traded and got Reggie Smith. So St. Louis, they're not going to sleep on this. They went and got some interesting sticks here, folks. Reggie Smith, 28 years old. Boston has all these young outfielders in their system, the Rick Millers, the Dwight Evans, Freddie Linds, and guys like that. So they let Reggie Smith, they traded him. 913 OPS. And oh, by the way, they have this hideous Bill Sadakis card that absolutely destroys left-handed pitching. They have two switch-hitting sluggers. Reggie Smith and Bill Sadakis, two switch-hitting sluggers, plenty of home runs from these two guys, to try and work their way up to the top of this division. It's going to be hard. They got to take a shot with this. It might not work for the Cardinals, but they got to take a shot because Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, it's very unlikely you get 3 playoff teams from one division. So they got to hope the Reds or Pirates slump and Reggie Smith and Bill Sadakis hit a boatload of home runs. All right. Next on the clock, your Toronto Blue Jays. Now, so next to Toronto here, you see the Commissioner Award. Yeah, that's because they're smart. The team that wins the Commissioner Award is a team that utilizes its roster most effectively by innings pitched and at-bats by all players on the team. The team that gets the most points in this category wins the Commissioner Award in the following draft, which is the compensatory pick between the first and second round. So Toronto will have the 33rd pick in this draft, which means they don't have an 8th round pick. They have a pick between the first and second round added to what they have. So that's the first indication that a team who didn't even exist is at least trying to be smart with what they have. Last year, they took Doyle Alexander, a young promising pitcher, away from the Baltimore Orioles. And this year, they are the first team in this draft to go into the year of 1972, look at available free agents whose rookie protection expires. The best whip and ERA on this list for a pitcher is Rorik Harrison. And guess where he was, folks? Baltimore. The Toronto Blue Jays. That's what you got to do. You got to steal from the teams in front of you. So 2 Baltimore pitchers who pitched very well, Doyle Alexander and Rorik Harrison, are gone. And Baltimore is going to have to just hope the old guys can stick around for a while. Rorik Harrison, great card, 94 innings, 2.30 ERA, a 1.02 whip, and the top. On the board, he was the top 1972 unprotected player. Now, that would start, you could call it kind of a run here, a mini run, because after Harrison was taken off the board across from a different team, Las Vegas is the next team on the board. They did the same thing. They found Jim Lonborg, who had a dry spell in 69, 70, and 71, was not in the league. He wasn't in the league. He's 30 years old in 72. Has not been in my league yet. Now he is. And he's not going to be a Brewer. He's not going to be a Philly, at least not yet. He's going to be with Las Vegas, who didn't have a spot in the rotation until they decided to move left-handed starter Woody Fryman from a starter 8 to a relief 4. So Woody Fryman goes to the bullpen to make room for Jim Lonborg. 2.83 ERA and 223 innings. This is the year that Jim Lonborg righted the ship. After 3 years in the desert, when he was 27, 28, and 29, not doing a whole lot. 72, he was brilliant, and then of course he would stay this way for about 3 more years. Helped the Phillies in 75, 76, I think. But yeah, nice year for Jim Lonborg. Would have liked to have used this guy in I don't have the Strat-O-Matic cards from 68, 67, 66, whatever, but you get the idea. Anyway, Jim Lonborg. And they also, for 72, they traded in the offseason for Ed Brinkman. Ladies and gentlemen, Ed Brinkman in 1972 gets top 10 MVP votes for the Detroit Tigers at age 30. And he hit 203 with a 538 OPS. But he's a 1E8 shortstop. It's almost like the sports writers were Strat-O-Matic players or something. They recognized how brilliant Brinkman's defense was for the Tigers and helped the Tigers win the American League East in 1972. Because how do you let a 203 hitter get MVP votes? But that's what happened, folks. And Vegas, another expansion team, making some smart moves when there's not a lot of, conventional players to get. They snag other teams' guys. Milwaukee. Now you're going to start to see a nice little run on that year of 73. I'm thinking 73 might be the best of the 4 years here with offense. I think 71 is nice and 73. 72 is kind of a sloppy year. It's not that great a card set. There was a labor. I think the season there was a strike. They missed some games. 73, they added the designated hitter, and that meant that a lot of guys started stroking the ball again. So 73, you're going to see George Scott, a Milwaukee Brewer at age 29. He's good in all these years, really. He's their best keeper, and 73, he's got an 858 OPS, so they picked that year, and he's a 1 first baseman. Back-to-back 1E8s. Brinkman at short, Scott at first. All right, next team up, it's going to be a 73 player, I remember. It's Atlanta. Oh, boy. Oh, my goodness. This team hit so many home runs from Hank Aaron and Dusty Baker and Darrell Evans. And now they got Davey Johnson, traded from Baltimore. He's 30 years old, and he only hit 43 home runs. 916 OPS. Davey Johnson to the Atlanta Braves. That team is going to be a cartoon. They're going to hit 300 home runs if it was a full 162-game season. They are silly. It's going to be fun this summer, just watching Atlanta destroy baseballs, and their only hope is that their pitching stinks. But I don't know about that. By the way, when you look here and you see lowercase, these are notes of guys that I think this team should draft in these particular rounds if they're still available. That's why you see names like that. All right, next up, the Twins, 1973 again. Some guy named Rod Carew, 27 years old. He only hit 350. 350, 411 on base, a 2E16 second baseman. I could have taken him in 74. It's 364, but he's a 4 defensive second baseman. So I value the defense. I'll sacrifice 14 points of batting average. Rod Carew, 73 card. Next up, the Clevetown Indians. They're going to go 74 here. And in the offseason, they made a trade. They traded away Frank Robinson, who they acquired from Baltimore the year before. They sent him to Portland for Jim Perry because they have Gaylord Perry in his best year, I believe, of 72. And now Jim Perry's best year at age 38 is 74. Jim and Gaylord Perry are teammates in Cleveland. And oh, by the way, they took this young corner outfielder to replace Frank Robinson by the name of Oscar Gamble. Oscar Gamble, 291, 833 OPS, 19 home runs, 509 plate appearances, 24 years old. He will bounce around this decade for Cleveland and the White Sox and the Yankees, but finally getting Oscar Gamble in the league. He was with the Phillies, I think. I believe he got a 69 and 70. There's a bunch of Oscar Gamble cards when he's like 19, 20, 21 years old. They're not very good. Age 24, probably his 5th year in the league is when he finally starts doing that power stuff. Houston. So we know they have the rights to Joe Morgan, and they're going to exercise that 71 card, get one more year out of it, and then in the offseason, there will be a trade of Joe Morgan to the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds aren't in Houston's division, but the Dodgers still are, and they still have the rights to Jim Wynn. So instead of taking Jim Wynn's 72 Houston card, trying to stick it to the Dodgers, which is what... Look, you got to compete in the draft like it's a game. We talked about Seattle taking Bill North away from Oakland, and we saw Texas, trying to stick it to Oakland too. Houston takes Jim Wynn away from the Dodgers. 1974 Jim Wynn. Was a Dodger. Would have gone to that World Series for the Dodgers. Dodgers will have to figure something else out, and they have plenty of outfielders lingering them there. 32 home runs, an 884 OPS with a 74 card. He'll play left, Cedeno will play center, Jose Cruz will play right. Wow. Nice pick for Houston. Next up, your Boston Red Sox. We know it's Carl Yastrzemski. I determined this a month ago. Carl Yastrzemski is going to be their first round pick. Now the question is, this is interesting, 71 and 72, Yaz is just kind of meh. And then he's getting up there in age too. But in 73, he's 33 years old. He's at that age, right? But he figures it out. He does something because he's got 105 walks in 73 and 105 walks in 74. So 69 and 70 Yaz are magnificent. 71 and 72 is just kind of meh. So I'm guessing he figured something out because we know Yaz will be playing baseball for another decade. He'll play through to 83 at age 40-something. But here's Yaz in 73, 2 at first and a 2 in the outfield, an 870 OPS, 652 plate appearances, an obvious first-round pick. Did they take another guy? No, they're waiting to see what they're going to do with their other option in 73. And they have plenty, so they don't want to commit. Teams commit when they definitely know what they want to do. They definitely wanted Oscar Gam here in Cleveland. But Boston's so flexible. They got all those outfielders. They got Tommy Harper. So they're going to wait. Next up, we're getting near the end of this draft here, folks. We got the Dodgers. Oh, well, this is a no-brainer again. So they had 1971 Steve Garvey was picked up last year to be a utility player. And oh, by the way, they said, hey, why don't we improve Steve Garvey to a 74 card? Because he's the most valuable player of the National League. He's a 1E7 at first base, 312 hitter, 21 homers, 111 RBI. So let's make Steve Garvey an MVP. Sounds good to me. So they're not really concerned of Jimmy Wynn not arriving. They're more than happy with making Steve Garvey an MVP. That's what's on the Dodgers' mind. All right, next up. Oh, my. So, White Sox. Oh, they are killing it, folks. They keep doing, like, crush offense stuff. Last year, they took Dick Allen's MVP card and Carlos May. They had the same stats in 72 with their first-round double-up picks. This year, oh, my goodness, folks. So, George Orta finally puts it together at age 23. He's a second baseman who hits .316 with power and an 805 OPS for George Orta. Last year at second base, they had Bobby Knoop and Jim LaFay hitting about 200. This year, their second baseman is going to hit .316. They weren't done. In the offseason, they wanted to shore up their outfield. They acquired Ken Henderson. Got the best Ken Henderson year he can do in 74. A rangy 2, a -2 arm. He has speed, power, on base. He's the 5-tool guy. He's not necessarily a 5-tool guy every year, and he doesn't do this for a long period of time, but at least he's doing it in this year for the White Sox. And this team is absolutely loaded. They lost the league championship series to Oakland a year ago. They have, oh my goodness, they have Dick Allen, Tony Muster hitting .285. They got Orta, they got Bill Melton, Carlos May, they got Buddy Bradford and Walt Williams. They are just going to have the top offense in the American League. And they're not in the same division as Oakland. They're in the Midwest, in the 4th division of the American League now. So all the White Sox have to do is stay ahead of Minnesota, Kansas City, and Milwaukee. All right, next up, the New York Mets. Winners of the World Series 2 years ago. Best record in baseball a year ago, but they went up against the Cincinnati Reds in the National League Championship Series. Only one team can win that, of course, and that was the Cincinnati Reds. Reds and Mets, might as well toss a coin, but the Mets could not repeat. But they did acquire Willie Mays a year ago, and they weren't going to just have him be one and done. They picked up a 71 card as well. He only has a 907 OPS at age 40. And this is what I'm saying, folks. A 40-year-old center fielder who is a 2 with a -2 arm in center field. How is it even possible? How is it possible? How do you be a 40-year-old guy who's a 2 with a -2 arm? I don't get it. But he did it. And they doubled that up. Oh my gosh, this isn't even fair. So Gary Gentry, you might remember Gary from the 1969 World Series win over Baltimore, winning a game. Well, guess what, folks? In 1971, he was a 12-game winner, and he pitched 200 innings, and he will join Tom Seaver and Jerry Koosman and John Matlack to give the Mets the best pitching rotation in all of baseball in the 2023 season. They're in the same division with the Atlanta Braves, who will have the best offense in the National League. Mets, Braves, National League East. It's going to get ugly. It's going to get nasty. Can't wait. Can't wait, Mets, Braves. Best pitching, best hitting. Okay. Now we get to the World Series teams. Oakland, the runner-up a year ago. They went to the middle of the dynasty, which I think is their best year of the three. 72 A's aren't really that good. 73, yeah, they're really good. The 73 A's are very, very good. And they doubled up with 2 cornerstone players. This is like no-brainer territory. They got Sal Bando's best year and Gene Tennis's best year. Bando, rangy 2 third baseman, 287, 873 OPS, doing Sal Bando stuff. Gene Tennis, finally a full season. Look at it, 160 games out of tennis. First full season for him in the whole timeline. Finally gets to his 20 home runs, 830 OPS. So they're going to add Campaneris from 74 when he's a 2. They'll probably get Coletta Washington to play center field since they lost out on Bill North. And the A's, they'll probably be back, you know, not a lot of drama. I mean, I've been talking about teams trying to screw over Oakland, but the reality is Oakland's going to be right there at the end with the White Sox and with Baltimore and Boston and things like that in the American League. Okay. Sal Bando, Gene Tennis. And finally, and last, you can probably figure this one out, folks. The Cincinnati Reds are on the clock. They, in 1970, the Cards from the 1970 league season are no longer in the league. The 1970 National League most valuable player was a catcher, number 5 for the team. His name is Johnny Bench. So in 1972, the National League most valuable player is some guy by the name of Johnny Bench. At age, is this even fair? Is this right? Is that even possible? He's got 2 MVPs by the age 24? Do I need to look this up? Is that even humanly possible? But anyway, yeah. Johnny Bench won -4 E9. He can't play center field anymore. That's a little disappointing. But Johnny Bench, 40 home runs. He had 45 in 70. 71, he had a lousy year. I have to admit that. He slumped. But then he came back in 72. 920 OPS for a -4 arm catcher. And that's all the Reds did because they're just going to sit and wait and pluck guys off of, you know. And so there we are. With the first round is in the books. Thanks for checking this out, folks. We'll see you next time.